Can you see that? If I were to assert that this paper is here in my hand, right now, on this day, at this time, so on and so forth, as is available to all of you empirically to observe and to judge. If the non-existence of this paper at this very point is a logical impossibility, then that will prove that the paper exists. Can you see that? Otherwise it doesn't prove anything. As far as the idea of a first cause is concerned, Hume is saying, well, I can equally presume that the first cause doesn't exist, and that does not imply any form of contradiction. And if it doesn't imply any form of contradiction, it doesn't mean anything to me. Of course, here we can argue against Hume by developing the cosmological argument further, and we are saying that actually it does imply a form of contradiction. The main problem that was cited by Kant with this argument, and that is I think it's a backbreaker for any form of cosmological argument, is this, that Kant is saying that through causation, which to the best of our knowledge applies to the physical world that we observe, which is empirically available, you are trying to prove the existence of a first God which is absolutely transcendent. How can you ever link the two together? You are operating within empirical premises, within an observed, tangible world, with real facts. And you are making a jump from this observation to prove the existence of a transcendent God which is nothing like anything that you observe. You can't feel Him, you can't touch Him, you can't smell Him, you can't see Him. How can you, from the basis of empirical observations, deduce the existence of such a transcendent being? The argument does not work. It needs to be bridged, and there is no bridging there. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Yes.
I just want to make a remark. I was reading Dua Arafat by Imam Hussein. And Imam Hussein in the Dua says, how can I use myself or the creation to prove the existence of you when the creation itself
is subordinate to you?
Subordinate to you.
He said, how can I look at your handiwork to lead me to you, when I see you standing before it, beyond it, below it? Can anything that you have produced be more manifest than you yourself? Yes? And as we said,
is that the same thing as what Kant is saying?
No, this is far loftier, and we're coming to that. We are coming to that. It's far loftier. But Kant's argument is valid. The cosmological argument fails bitterly as it stands. So, the cosmological argument, as developed by the Muslims, by Aquinas, and the principle of sufficient reason, they all fail when it comes to Kant's argument and criticism. I don't know if you recall Aquinas' formulation of the argument. We explained it through the Muslim philosophers, because the Western philosophers are having a bit of a difficulty trying to understand how Aquinas has formulated this argument. He does not dismiss the fact that you can have unending, infinite regression within temporal causes. Yes? But he is saying that you cannot have regression in non-temporal causes, and through that he proves the existence of the... Actually, it's a fantastic argument, and we don't have the time to go through it. I was just hoping that you would recall it. But in any case, all of them are failing to the extent to which they stand. Then we came to the teleological arguments, if you remember. In teleology, what we are doing is, we are using the end, yes, the directed end as an argument. Aquinas, in his fifth demonstration, he states, well, when you shoot an arrow, the arrow doesn't have any notion of the end towards which it is flying. It is the one that shot the arrow that gives it its objective and purpose. But it doesn't have purpose of itself. However, when you see this world of ours, everything is purposeful, everything is directed somehow. It does not have the sufficient awareness in itself to direct itself, and hence there must be something or someone that is directing them, and that was his simple form of teleology. Of course, Aristotle was the first one to envisage the beginnings of his argument by giving a quadruple division of cause as the efficient, the final, the material and the formal. It's based on this final cause, that there is a purpose towards which everything is directed. It's not directing itself, so God must be directing it. You remember that? It's a simple form. Pele came and developed this argument greatly. According to him, and if you remember his formulation of the argument, it's quite wonderful the way he states it. He says that if I was walking on a beach and I found a rock, I would not think much of it. However, if for the first time I saw a timepiece, a watch, and I saw it functioning, and I opened it up, and I saw all the little gadgets that are inside there so meticulously placed together and operating, I would be compelled to think that such intricate, sophisticated design cannot have come about by itself. It must have been brought about by a watchmaker or a designer. And that's why it's known as a design argument. Then he draws an analogy and he states, well, look at the eye and the workings and the functions of an eye. The little nerves inside there, the way it receives light, the way it contracts, the way it dilates, so on and so forth. There must be a divine designer that has designed this eye, and similarly the whole of this world. Now through his teleology, Pele is proving two things. The existence of a designer and the all-knowing nature of the designer. First and foremost, he states through analogy that a timepiece, with the way in which it is designed, cannot have come about by itself. There has to be a designer. Similarly, the whole of this world, which is far more designed, works in much more meticulous fashion, yes, and with so much more precision, has to have a designer that has made it. So that proves the existence of a designer. And secondly, in terms of the ability of the designer, he states, well, we do have imperfections in this world. We do find certain people who are blind, certain people who are handicapped, so on and so forth. But does this falter with the notion of the all-knowing nature and ability of the designer? He says no. He says the fact that out of the 5.5 billion people who exist on the face of this earth, who can all see. Put this on silent.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes.
About talking to the blind watchmaker and reminded of the
Let's come to it after this discussion, and then you can point out what the problem there is, yes?
But can I ask you, before you proceed further, is that what you are personally trying to project that there is an intelligent design, because there is intelligence in the design, therefore there is a...
You see, you will find that when we cite Hume's criticism, you will find that what you're trying to say is already there, it's already been stated. So towards the end, we can deal with that more thoroughly.
Against blind watchmaking.
Something like that. We're going to go through it. Our thoughts are totally different. I'm just stating the arguments in order to recap and finding the faults with these arguments. Yes? And then we are coming to what we feel adequately does supply the notion of a creator. Yeah? All these theories are subordinate to those what we are going to discuss in a little while. Personally, we don't find any of these convincing theories, these arguments, sorry. So according to Pele, he states the fact that out of 5.5, let us say this is what he would say, 5.5 billion people who all have perfectly valid, functioning eyes, when you have 1% or 0.5% of humanity who cannot see, surely you will attribute that not to the designer or the ability of a designer, but to some flaw and something that has gone wrong within existence and to some other cause.